G'day guys and welcome back to a new episode of the Boundary Riders podcast. So much to talk about today. Of course, we'll be taking a look at a little bit of a preview of the AFL Finals race, a little bit of news and updates and that sort of stuff. We're also going to be going and grading every single team that were eliminated from the finals, of course, this week. The final tipping ladder, the final AFL fantasy breakdown of the year. So let's not waste any more of your time. Let's roll the intro and get straight into it. And then Rankin from the pocket, don't tell me, Isaac Rankin!
Yeah.
He's just got the license for a brothel.
Well, I think Gather Round's going to be AFL. I think this is next season.
It's at the handle at the back. Nick Dankos to get the pies home! He's done it! So guys, my brother is away this week, but don't worry. He will be here for the Boundary Riders medal live stream on Friday. I did announce it in the review this week and the video essay as well. So if you don't know, the Boundary Riders medal, we'll be doing a live stream, doing the votes, counting it all down. We're also going to be giving away awards for the Goal of the Year, Mark of the Year, and the Flog of the Year, which we've obviously been announcing on the channel all season long. So there won't be a nominee this week for the Flog of the Year for anything like that. Goal of the Year is all done. So what we are going to do though is I am going to put a link down in the description below, or probably the pinned comment, for a way that you guys can vote for the Goal of the Year, the Mark of the Year, and the Flog of the Year as well. So you guys will have a chance to have your say. Probably I'll put it in a little unlisted video of the different things you can vote for. But basically a little breakdown of it is the fact that the goal and the mark of the year are going to only be able to be highlights that were caught on stream. So something that we were live streaming a game of. So for example, Jamie Elliott, the mark that he took, we actually did see that one on live stream. So that could potentially win. Goal of the year. Not a lot of Goal of the Years that we saw, were probably in the nominees. So be interesting to see who wins that one. Obviously, me and my brother are going to be picking and deciding who wins those awards. But you guys will have your say as well to sway the votes either way. So that's the way we're kind of going to do that. So that's pretty much all of that. The Flog of the Year as well, we're going to be deciding, and you guys can have your say on that as well. So check the link down below, the links. I think I'll try and put a little an unlisted video so you guys can check out which sort of awards and the certain goals and marks and stuff you guys can actually see, so you guys can have a actual look at what sort of things are happening, and we'll try to do the same for Spotify as well. So that's pretty much all of that sort of stuff. So just going into a little bit of news and the breakdown over the weekend, of course. I'm recording this Monday afternoon, 5 o'clock, so we've seen some actual news drop. The first one, and probably the biggest news to come out of the weekend, was the Keziah Pickett suspension, which I did put into the video essay, and I didn't believe it deserved 3 weeks. I kind of thought he deserved to get away with it. I know that that's a bit of a contentious call for some people, but I thought that Darcy Moore dropped his knees and Pickett really didn't intend to hit him in the head or really bump him. But I do understand the argument of he chose to bump, so he's given away his innocence. So I kind of get that. On the other side of it, and these were two that were made on the Sunday games, Liam Jones with a dangerous tackle on Aaron Cadman, and then we had Matt Owies a tackle on Jack Higgins. Now, both of them made tackles. Both of the tacklers slammed their opponent's head into the turf. Both players that were tackled got up and didn't go off with concussion. Liam Jones let one arm free. Matt Owies locked both arms of Jack Higgins, which I think is kind of the difference why they've made this decision. Michael Christian. Liam Jones got away with it. He didn't receive a ban. Matt Owies got one game. Now, the thing I want to take a look at about these two suspensions is the way that it was graded. So, the match review officer in Michael Christian was the one who graded these, of course. So, with Liam Jones, it was called careless conduct, low impact, high contact. Now, with Matt Owies, it was careless conduct, medium impact, and high contact. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, if you watch those two clips next to each other, they are pretty much the exact same impact. So I don't know where Michael Christian has gone with, this was maybe a little bit extra speed on the swinging of the tackle. Get a grip. That was ridiculous. Either Liam Jones... Look, the way they've gone this season, they've been pretty... I don't want to say consistent, but they've been pretty regular on the fact that if you slam someone's head into the ground, you are going to get weeks. And I know you can look at the likes of Toby Bedford and Cameron. They obviously reversed those ones. Were they looking to injure? I don't know. I guess that's one of the big talking points with the Cameron and the Bedford one was because were they intending to hurt a player? I feel like they both did the exact same thing. So I don't see how they have graded one low impact and one medium. Because also, neither of the players came off through concussion. Because, I mean, at least if... I don't even think one of them came off with a 20-minute HIA. So if neither Cadman or Higgins came off, if neither of them had any sort of injury setback or anything like that, why has Jones got away with it while Owies has been given one game? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. So I think this is an absolute joke. I don't get why Michael Christian's made this decision. He's made some curious decisions all year on this front. It seems like he doesn't even know how to grade them. So, and especially two in the exact same round. Like, I can get it, like, if they make a decision, like with the Jack Higgins one compared to the Dangerfield one, which I talked about in the vid essay. The fact that they were apart from each other, and even the Bedford one and the Dangerfield one, even though they were only a couple of weeks, at least they were a couple of weeks apart. This is on the same day, 2 games apart, a couple of hours apart. I don't get how he's made the decision to give Owies a game and Jones nothing. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. I have absolutely no idea how they've graded that. The difference between low and medium impact. It's an absolute joke. Absolute farce this season, the Tribunal and the AFL MRO. Absolute joke. But Michael Christian was lucky he got away with it this week. He could have been nominated for the flog of the week and maybe even potentially flog of the year. But he's got away with it. He's very lucky. Maybe he actually timed this perfectly. I don't know. Now, moving on to a couple of news stories throughout the weekend and on Monday as well. Looks like Lions defender Jackson Payne, who's missed a lot of this year through injury, will be playing in the VFL this weekend for the Lions and is potentially should be ready to go to face the Blues. So that's an interesting one. Jack Payne, is a very important defender. He was very good last year for the Lions and he missed out on the grand final through injury. So interesting to see how he goes, if he can pull up and get ready to go, because I think he's a really important player for the Lions. He can definitely play as that third tool. I know that Ryan Lester's played that a lot throughout this year, but I think that there's so many dangerous small forwards now that I think Jackson Payne, especially the fact that the Lions are conceding a lot of goals, I feel like he would be very helpful for them. Another little news story is the fact that Richmond have finally announced a new CEO, which is Shane Dunn. I don't really know much about him, to be honest. I'm sorry, but he has taken over from Brendan Gale, who obviously is going to be the new Tassie CEO, the Tassie team. So I think they should have done this a long time ago. I'm going to be honest. I think that they've waited way too long. I understand that Brendan Gale was saying that he can do the job before he moves to play for the Tassie job and stuff. But I feel like they should have moved him on a lot earlier. That's kind of my thought process on that. And then just a couple of little interesting ones about delistings. This is pretty early on in the week, so we'll see how many more teams do that from teams that have been eliminated. But the Magpies have actually said that they've delisted ruck Aiden Begg after 3.5 seasons. It does seem that he has done another knee injury throughout the year, so he's been delisted, which is really unfortunate. Obviously, you don't want to see players delisted. And also on Essendon, they have delisted Tex Wanganeen, Kane Baldwin, which I was a bit of a surprise, and an absolute shock was Nick Hind. This seems like Brad Scott's really trying to pick the players that he wants now. Nick Hind's huge. I was shocked when I saw that because I felt like he's had a pretty decent year. I feel like he was in and out of the team, but there was times this year where he was in their best 22, and I thought was a very good player. Now I think he's a little bit inconsistent, but I don't think that's I don't think you can deny that. But the fact that Nick Hind's been delisted, that shocked me, and I would not be surprised one bit if he gets picked up by another club, because I feel like a speed player like him, I think he's a pretty good depth player and could play in the VFL or in the reserves for a while, but I feel like he could come in. He's probably in your best 25, 26 players. I don't think he was that far away from the Essendon team for a lot of this year, so I'm very surprised that Nick Hind was delisted. But let's talk about the AFL Finals, shall we? We've kind of waited 9 or 10 minutes, so let's talk about it. So the finals have been announced, the games and when they're going to be played. Thursday night, it is Port Adelaide up against Geelong. Friday night, it is the Bulldogs up against Hawthorn. Saturday afternoon, it is the Swans up against the Giants, and then the Lions will play the Blues on Saturday night. Now, bit of a contentious one is the fact that the Swans are playing the Giants on Saturday. Very interesting, because whoever loses that game is not going to get much of an advantage at all. They will get not a huge advantage here, because they're going to just play the team Brisbane Lions or Carlton 7 days later at the very least, and may even be 6-day break if they play them on Friday night. The loser of the qualifying final and the winner of the elimination final. Very interesting. I feel like the Swans had to have said that to the AFL that they want the Saturday afternoon game, because surely the Swans would want at least the Friday night game. Now, I understand the AFL probably wanted the Bulldogs and Hawthorn game to be on Friday night because they want a game at the MCG prime time. And I think the Bulldogs-Hawthorn game is going to be an absolute classic for an elimination final. I think it's going to be brilliant. But surely that's the Saturday afternoon game. Surely, at the very least, it's a Saturday night game. Port Adelaide, I can give you my little tips now. These aren't my official tips. I'll just put it out there now. I think Port Adelaide will beat Geelong. I think that's going to be a very good contest. Port Adelaide, obviously, they do have a very poor finals record. Well, not very poor. Well, yeah, kind of very poor, let's be honest. But I think the Cats, they've had good games against very poor teams, and they also lost the week before last against St Kilda. So I think the Cats, it's a little bit of a false form at the moment. I'm just going to say it. I feel like the Cats can get it going when they need it to, but I feel like Port Adelaide at the moment, I feel like they're very underrated. I feel like the Port Adelaide are in very good form. They're in the best form in any team in the comp right now, very opposite to what it was last year. They kind of just got to the finals and then went out in straight sets. I feel like Port Adelaide won't do that this time. I think that the Power have got some real strengths to their bow right now. They've won 5, I think, games in a row. Zach Butters is in some great form. Rosie's in some great form. Their pressure game is brilliant. Ollie Wines played really well. He needs to be one of their best players if they're going to win the premiership. I don't know. Maybe we'll get into a little bit of like who's going to make the grand final talk in a minute. I don't know about Port Adelaide. I feel like some people don't trust them, and I think that's warranted because of how they've done in finals in years gone past. I feel like this is a little bit different, though, for the Power. And I think they can make the grand final. I think especially if they win their first elimination final, their first qualifying final, that they can be a big threat, but they still have to make it. And I think Port, if they do, they will have a tough game in there. I think they have the easier side of the draw, if I'm going to be honest. I feel like, because let's say they do win, they'll either play Brisbane, Carlton, GWS or Sydney. Now, Carlton scraped into the finals. The Giants, they're probably in the best form out of any other team, though. Brisbane Lions have been up and down, and the Sydney Swans, they've won their last 3 games. But if you played them in a preliminary final, I think it'd be very interesting. On the other side of it, if they were playing Western Bulldogs or Hawthorn, arguably some of the better teams in the comp, I feel like they got a bit lucky. But that semi-final will be very interesting on that side. So moving to the first elimination final, which is the Bulldogs up against Hawthorn. This is such a big game. I know that the Bulldogs have to play at the MCG because it's the Melbourne team, and they have to play at the biggest ground in Melbourne, obviously. It's a little bit unfortunate, though. I mean, if the Cats are allowed to play at Cardinia Park, surely that the Bulldogs can ask to play at Marvel. I feel like that's fair enough. Now, I understand that this is the only game in Melbourne for the finals, for the first week of the finals, so they're probably not too happy about that, the AFL. But let's put that aside. This is going to be a massive game. If the Bulldogs bring their best, I feel like they can top off Hawthorn. But Hawthorn are in such good form right now. So I think that on my tip at the moment, it probably would be Hawthorn. But the Bulldogs have got so much to play for. They're best, the Bulldogs will beat anyone, but they just can be so inconsistent at times. Like against the Giants, they were brilliant. A couple of weeks before that, they played the Crows and were very poor, and they missed so many opportunities. The one concern I have about Hawthorn is, can they defend like real high pressure? Because that's what finals is all about. They've looked really good the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks on their offense. Can they defend enough to win big finals? Now, the Bulldogs, I think, are very much more of an offensive team, so this may be a bit of a shootout. So that would play into Hawthorn's hands more, and that's the big reason why I'm kind of looking at Hawthorn for that final. But if as they keep on going, I think they'll get through, but I don't know if they can continue that, because if they go up against the Cats or Port Adelaide, can they sustain that? Because having high attack is obviously great, when you're playing against the likes of North Melbourne or even teams, mid-table. But once you play the best of the best in a big final, can they match that as well? So that's what I'm really interested to see how Hawthorn go. No matter when they go out, the Hawks, Hawks especially, they've had an amazing season, and I feel like Sam Mitchell has to be the coach of the year. He's been brilliant. The Bulldogs... Is it a failed season if they don't get through to the next round? I don't know. That's a very interesting one, because I picked them to make the finals this year. I picked them I think I picked them to finish the bottom half of the top 8. So I think that's where I kind of put them. So this is where I kind of saw them happening. But, you know, they've had their best has been some of the best like footy this year, the Dogs. But when they've dropped games when they really shouldn't have. They should have already had secured finals a long time ago before the last round of the season. So on that side, I feel like the Bulldogs should be favourites here, but I'm just going to go with Hawthorn on the fact that they are in such good form. After that, the Sydney Swans and the Giants. Well, far out. On the fact that the Swans are on top, they did so well throughout the year. Obviously had that really poor 8-week period, but at the end of the day, they have finished top of the ladder. The Giants have a 3-0 record against Sydney in finals. So this sets up for a huge game. Now, I'm going to tentatively tip Sydney at the moment. I think that Sydney have definitely found some form in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And they should get back, at very least they'll get Heaney and McCartan back. Most likely they'll get Papley back. And I'll be interested to see if Justin McInerney's good to go as well. So there will be some changes coming through. The one thing I have liked about Sydney in the last couple of weeks as well is the fact that Mills has returned to some really good form playing in the back half. Luke Parker playing up forward through the midfield as well has been a really good move for him. So we'll be interested to see what happens on the team front for the Swans, because obviously there's a lot of talk about Taylor Adams. I feel like he'll probably get dropped. But after that, it's kind of interesting what happens, because you could say Cleary goes out, but I almost wouldn't drop him. I mean, you'd pick Papley over him, but I feel almost like Sydney may drop a tool for the first final. Now, I know that may be a big call, but I would keep Cleary in the team, because I feel like he's bringing that pace around the forward line. Sam Wicks obviously won't get picked, but I've liked how Cleary's played, so I wouldn't take him out. So if Papley comes in, I would almost take out a tool, whether that be, it's probably got to be Amati. Now, I know Amati's obviously had the 9-goal game, so that's a pretty tough call, but that's just me saying that as a Swans fan. McInerney will come in. It's probably for a Fox or a Campbell. So probably Fox, because Campbell's definitely hit form the last month or so. So that's where I'm kind of looking on that one. And then, so what? You've got McInerney in for, let's say, let's have a look at the team from last week. So McCartan obviously comes in for Francis. That's an easy one. McInerney, you'd probably say would come in for... Oh, it's tough. I'd say Robbie Fox. I feel like that's going to happen. Isaac Heaney will come straight back in. He comes in for Taylor Adams. And then it's the big call. Do you take out Cleary for Papley, or do you take out a Toole for Papley? I'm leaning towards a Toole. Now, I know that's a big... I know people will say that's a stupid decision, but Sydney have never really tried that this year, which is probably against the fact of that. But Sydney have always played 3 Tools this year. Amati, McDonald, and... Sorry, McLean, McDonald, and Amati. So I'd be very interested to see what Sydney make the call off here. I think like that's what's going to be the changes. Adams will come out for Heaney. Fox will come out for McInerney. McCartan will come out... Francis will come out for McCartan. And then the interesting call will be if Papley comes in for Cleary, or if he comes in for a Toole. That's kind of where I'm looking at right now. I can't see anyone else really getting dropped from the Sydney lineup. The only other one I would say is Campbell or Roberts, but I feel like both of them have really been good the last 3 or 4 weeks, so I don't think it'll be any of them. But that's kind of what I'm looking for on the Swans. I still think the Swans will win, but the Giants, you know, if it wasn't for their loss last week against the Bulldogs, when, by the way, they dropped 3 players before the game, they've been in really good form, the Giants, so it's really hard to go against them as well. Now, they obviously dropped out. It was Daniels, Bedford, and Connor Stone. So Daniels comes straight back in. That's an obvious one. And Bedford will come in as well. So it's a tough one. Nick Haynes probably goes out because of how he had a pretty poor game last week, I would say. Who else would come out? Do we ever look at? You're probably looking at maybe a McMullen, maybe. Probably for Daniels. And then, Bedford comes straight back in because he has to tag against one of the Swans players. I'll be interested to see who Bedford would go to as well. And I think looking at the form of both these two, they played earlier in the year twice, obviously. And the Swans played the Giants when they were in their low form. So it was just after they had that beautiful start to the year, the Giants, and just before they got back into form, basically. I think they played them in round 7 and round 13. I think it sets up for such a big game, this one. So I think this one's honestly 50-50. Now, I know people will say the Swans are in really good form, or the Swans finished top, they deserve to be favourites, and the Giants, on the other hand, they are really good form for them before last week, so they could be favourites as well. I think it sets up for a great contest. I'm a little bit disappointed it's on at 3:40, but it's going to be a great game. So I think if anyone's never seen a Sydney, what do they call it? The Sydney Smash or the Sydney Battle of the Bridge, far out. Well, you should watch it because it'll be a great game. It'll be a really fierce contest too. And then finally we get to the Brisbane v Carlton game. Now, you probably think a couple of times this year this was the prelim last year. It's very, I think it's a little bit later in the night, but it's pretty much same time slot, same day, a couple of weeks apart. I don't want to say Carlton are scraping in because I feel like if they bring all their players back, they're still going to be very competitive. The Brisbane Lions, I'm not so harsh on them as much as other people would say. Sorry, I got an itch in my nose. I'm not as harsh on the Brisbane Lions because I feel like they have dominated the last 3 weeks, even though they've only won one game. But they've just missed in front of goal. I think they can definitely steady that up. And I don't have too many issues. I actually think Brisbane can still go and win the flag from here. I think at their best, the Brisbane Lions are a very dangerous prospect to go up against. So I think whoever plays in that I think the semi-finals after these two first finals are going to be huge contests. But I'm going to go the Lions on the fact that it's at the Gabba. Carlton, who knows if they're going to get those players back. Even if they do, I feel like they've looked dangerous at times. If they can get Curnow and Mackay back, I feel like that's going to be really good for them. DeConing could come back as well. So I think there's great inclusions that Carlton can bring in. But I just don't trust them. Their form has been so down the last 7 or 8 weeks. I really don't think they deserve to make finals, how they've played the last 8 or 9 weeks. 6 or 7 weeks. And they scraped in on the fact that Port Adelaide got them there. So if anyone's making up the numbers, I would say Carlton are. But look, if they get all their players back, they could be a chance, the Blues. And, I'm not saying they can go all the way, but their team can compete with the best. We obviously saw that at the start of the year and through the mid-period that they are one of the best teams when they're at their best and at their full strength. So we'll see how we go. I think it's set up for a great final series. My non-official tips are Port to beat the Cats, Hawthorn to beat the Bulldogs, the Swans to beat the Giants, and the Lions to beat the Blues. Unofficial. We'll make the official tips next week. My brother's back with the podcast, but that's kind of what we're looking for on that front. So up next, guys, I wanted to actually take a look at the teams that missed out on the finals and just give them a little bit of a grading. So we'll start right down at the bottom of the ladder, of course, the Richmond Tigers. And look, I know they've had a tough year. They've had a lot of injuries, had a lot of stuff like player departures being in the news throughout the majority of the year. Dusty Martin's been on and off in the news talk. But to be honest, the Tigers, even though I did expect them to be a bit of a slider this year, no way did I think they were going to get the wooden spoon. So I just have to give them an F rating. I was expecting the Tigers to probably drop down just a little bit this year after missing the finals in 2023. But it was only 2 years ago when the Tigers were in the finals. And it was, only 4 years ago since they've got their third flag. So it's a really steep drop-off from the Tigers. I know Adam Uze is a new coach, so I don't put a lot of blame onto him at this stage. But yeah, I can't really put the Tigers any higher than an F rating because, yeah, they've just had a really poor year. And I know a couple of things haven't gone their way specifically, but I can't really put them up any higher than that. Looking at North Melbourne, I don't know how many people will feel about this, but I'm actually going to give them a D rating. Because I don't think many people would have had North much higher than where they finished on the ladder. And to be honest, where they were sitting on the ladder, at the bottom of the ladder, around 10 or 11, not really having too many wins, it probably would have been an F rating. But after the bye, they actually showed some decent signs. And a lot of players starting to stay with them, like Luke Davies-Uniacke, Zerha deciding to stay. And there's a lot of good improvement around the young players. Of course, Sheasel, Wardlaw, Powell, other young stars is a really good sign. So I can't go any higher than a D level for North Melbourne because they haven't done any better than last season and they finished 17th on the ladder. You can't give them much more than a D rating. It's not a failed season. I think North Melbourne definitely had some growth and I think they can definitely build on that. So I have to give them a D, but I don't think I could go any higher than that. Now, moving to West Coast, I know a lot of people may be a bit surprised, but I'm actually going to give them a C rating for this season because despite their last game of the season where they got smashed by the Cats, I think there were actually some okay times for the Eagles. Now, Harley Reid looks like an absolute star in the making. Waterman had an absolutely massive year. And I think with the injury-prone players back like the seniors, such as McGovern, Barras, Yeo, I think the majority of their season, I think they did okay. I know that a really dreadful start to the year, those first 4 or 5 weeks. Then they had a good couple of patches throughout the year. So I don't don't think it's all doom and gloom. And to be honest, I thought they were going to finish bottom of the ladder, and I didn't actually think they were going to win a game looking at the start of the season. I thought there was so many problems with the West Coast Eagles, but the fact that they did get a couple of wins, I think C is probably fair for them. I do think they could be a bit of a slider though next year, which is kind of, I mean, it's a weird thing to say because they're 16th, but I do think that there will be a couple of players that do leave. Like I think Barras is probably gone. We've obviously seen the retirement of Gaff as well, and I don't think Darling will be there next year either. So they do have some good young forwards. They have some good pillars up forward, and they have a pretty good ruckman in Matt Flynn if he's fit and ready to go. I just think their depth is very tested as soon as they get one or two injuries. So I think that's going to be the issue for the West Coast Eagles going forward. Now, a team that I do want to have a really deep look at is the Adelaide Crows. They obviously finished 15th on the ladder. There were so many expectations for Adelaide this year, with the previous season almost making the finals if it wasn't for a controversial decision against the Sydney Swans. And look, maybe we did put a little bit too much pressure on the Adelaide Crows going into the season, but other than maybe Rankin, Fogarty, Saligo, maybe Michaelani, a couple of defenders, who's really improved this year for the Adelaide Crows? I couldn't say many more than who I just mentioned. I think Isaac Rankin was very, very good, and Darcy Fogarty had some times. Thilthorpe would have been really good if he played throughout the season, but obviously missed a lot of it through injury. But they needed what was expected of them. They needed players to reach another level, which no one really did. Like Dawson played a good season, but I think he played better last year. Rory Laird, kind of the same. Riley O'Brien, I thought was pretty good, but again, he got dropped throughout the year. I think Sam Berry had a pretty good year, but there's not a lot of young players coming through until Matthew Nicks kind of chucked them in later in the season when it was all dead and buried. Like Zach Taylor, I think, had a couple of good games, Billy Dowling, but there was no growth for the Crows, and I feel like that's a really big issue, and I'm going to have to give them an F. I mean, I thought they were going to be a real riser this year. I thought they were going to make the 8. I think I had them in 5th or 6th for the ladder ratings, and again, maybe I overthought of what the Crows were going to do, but it has to be a failure for Adelaide. They finished in the bottom 4. That is going that's going backwards from where everyone thought they were going to be. I mean, you compare them to Hawthorn at 7th spot, making the finals. Hawthorn were expected to be behind the Crows in their sort of rebuild or regen or whatever you want to call it. And Hawthorn have just skyrocketed past them, and the Crows finished 15th on the ladder. Next up, I want to take a look at Melbourne. I feel like this is a pretty easy one. Obviously a failure. Now, I know they had so many injuries and countless distractions on and off the field with Petrarca, Oliver, even Viney at some points. They haven't evolved with the game. The game in the last 3 or 4 years has turned so much into a pressure offensive game, and the Melbourne Football Club are still playing so defensive, so lethargic. It's such a boring team to watch. They just won't do anything to evolve. And I know there's some there's obviously points of there's not many key forwards there. They don't have much ball movement players, but there needs to be change. And I don't think Simon Goodwin should be sacked yet, but I would say his job is on the agenda coming into the next pre-season and going out through next year, because they're a boring team to watch. They're one of the most boring teams in the comp. And look, everyone was expecting that their defence and their midfield would get them through to finals, but they failed. They got nowhere near it. They finished just above the Crows. They finished 14th in the end. This team's been in the last 2 final series and won the flag the year before that, and they missed the finals. They finished 14th on the ladder. I think they'll be better off next year with players back, Oliver having a pre-season and all that, but you can't give them any higher than an F. That is a dreadful season from Melbourne. They're probably my most disappointing team this year. Now, the Gold Coast finished in 13th spot, and they were very, very close to getting an F rating as well. The fact that their list is stacked, they have an accomplished coach now, and they've also had a very soft draw. I think everything was pointing to giving the Gold Coast Suns an F here. I was very close to doing it. The only reason why I've upgraded them to an E rating or an E grading is the fact that I do think we need to give Damien Hardwick 12 months to settle into his role. I still think you need to give him 12 months. I didn't really expect them to make the finals of the Gold Coast Suns, but definitely not anywhere near a pass mark by any means. And I do think you have to mention the fact that I know a lot of people mention their away record and only winning 2 games away from home, but the fact that they won so many games at home, and the fact that if they can keep that going into next year, I think they'll definitely be close to the finals next year for the Gold Coast. And who knows what happens with the list management and list changes through the off-season. I can't give them any higher than an E. They were very close to getting an F. I just think that you need to give Damien Hardwick 12 months, and I think there were some good signs for the Gold Coast. The fact that they, barely lost at home is such a good thing to have going into next year if they can bring that with them. Because all the Gold Coast really had to do this year is if they won 2 or 3 of their away games, not even half, 3 of their away games, they make finals. They were close. They just need to somehow get wins away from home. Like the games that they were losing to, like North Melbourne, you can't lose to North Melbourne no matter what. You can't lose to North Melbourne. I know it's in Victoria, but you can't lose that. You lose to St Kilda where they're in dreadful form. Not good enough. They need to find a way to win. I don't know if Damien Hardwick needs the Gold Coast to sleep in like planes over the off season and see how they go, try to train them through that. But yeah, I think like the Gold Coast, it's an E rating for me. The Saints, look, after the finals last year, some people may think that they should be worse off with their grading, but I'm going to give them a C. Now, I honestly think that they overachieved last year. I don't think they were anywhere near finals, and I think because they had such a great start to the year that they just scraped in there and they were making up the numbers last year. Now, yes, I think they had a very bad start to the season, but I do think that they really had a good second half to their year. They knocked off the Swans, the Cats, and they almost knocked the Blues out of the finals last week. Now, I think that the younger players really grew throughout this year, like Filippo, Owens at times looked pretty good. I'll be very interested to see how this off-season goes for the Saints as well. I'll be interested to see what they do with Max King as well. They look so much more dangerous in the latter parts of the year when Max King wasn't there. So I don't think they should get rid of him by any means, but they just need to find a way to use their other forwards because they are dangerous, but they don't use them better. They don't use them good enough. They just go to Max King and then they chuck 3 defenders on him and St Kilda can't score. Now on to Essendon. Now, if you judge them on the second half of their year, it's an absolute F rating for Essendon. They've dropped off yet again. It's another year, and it's... I want to give them an F. I want to give Essendon an F. But I'm going to sit on an E rating because they had a very good start to the year, and I just don't know what's wrong with their second halves of their seasons because I think they had finals almost locked up halfway through the year, Essendon. They had some good signs, they had a good lineup, and they just they did it to themselves. They would not win games when they needed to. Games like the Gold Coast a couple of weeks ago, they kicked 1 goal 9 in the last quarter. Like, you've got to win that game. It's not good enough. Now, we've already seen a couple of list changes already made by Brad Scott, so it seems like this off-season is going to be really important for the Bombers. I thought that maybe last off-season when they picked up some players, there were some good signs, especially earlier in the year, but it seems like a lot of them didn't really perform that well, especially in the latter parts of the year. I think that there were some good signs for Essendon. Zach Merritt's one of the best captains in the comp. I don't care what anyone says. I think he's a really good player. Kyle Langford as well had a good year. Probably not as good as last year, but he still had a good year. I think there are some players that Essendon can use and go moving forward, but their second half of their season was absolutely dreadful. Now, after that, we get to Fremantle. Well, in the last month or so, you'd have to give Fremantle an F, wouldn't you? On the last month that they had. I know that they had a couple of injuries at the wrong time, like Pearce and Tracy, but Fremantle, all they had to do was get 1 win in the last month, and they would have made finals. So I'm going to give Fremantle a C rating. Now, the reason why I'm doing that is because 20 rounds of the year, they were great. They were exceeding my expectations. I didn't see Fremantle making anywhere near the 8 this year. I thought they were going to be around that 10th, 11th, 12th mark, which they inevitably did finish. But they were brilliant this year. There were so many good signs for them. Hayden Young moving into the midfield, what a masterstroke that was. Jordan Clark, arguably All-Australian. They had some great midfielders moving through. And finally, I bet you there's almost so many Fremantle fans, thank God they've found a couple of key forwards to kick to. And they didn't have to spend 3 first-round draft picks on Logan McDonald. Because Josh Tracy, you would love him at any team. He's not only a really good kick for the footy when he goes for goal, but if he doesn't mark a contested mark, he brings the ball to ground. And so many teams are screaming for that. So Josh Tracy, such a good player. They missed him so much at the end of the year. Jai Amos, I know he didn't kick as well as he did the year before in front of goal, but I think that Jai Amos is definitely one to build into for the future as well. I mean, I think he kicked 35 plus goals this year. Another preseason into him, he's going to be massive. I can't go higher than a C because the fact is, where they were sitting on the ladder, the Dockers, they should have been making finals 100%. You can't deny that. But I can't go any lower than a C because I think that they were amazing throughout the majority of this year. I don't think many people expected them to be as good as they were. And I think in this off-season, it's such an important, probably the most important off-season for Fremantle in their history. They've already been linked to a couple of players like Shea Bolton and Liam Baker. So we'll see how they go if they can pick them up. But if they can get them to, I think Fremantle are going to be one of the huge risers next year. So I think there's a lot to build off of. Now, the fact that they didn't make finals, they have a longer pre-season, they'll probably get an easier draw. The fact that they play in Perth is such a advantage for them, obviously. They don't lose many home games. So I think Fremantle are going to be a huge riser next year. And finally, Collingwood. Now, I know there was a lot of injuries to impact them this year, but they won a premiership last year. It has to be an F. This team was expected to, I don't know if they were going to go back to back, but people were expecting, I was expecting them to be right at the pointy end of the season. And it looked like, especially at the start of the season, that they were pretty content by just getting the one premiership. And look, I understand that is fine for a lot of players, but in an industry like the AFL, you got to back it up. You got to, celebrate the highs, celebrate that sort of stuff, but also when the whips are cracking, you got to be there, and the Pies simply weren't. Other than Nick Dacos, Darcy Cameron, there weren't a lot of improvers this year. And I'll be interested to see how this off-season goes for Collingwood if they go and target a big key forward, because that is something they do need. I think that Daniel McStay, when he came back in those last month or so, I think he's definitely someone they can build off of as a key forward, but they do need someone to support him. I don't think Mason Cox is really that option. I just think that, especially he's aging now as well. So I'm interested to see what Collingwood do in this off-season. But guys, let me know down below what you would be giving gradings for some of these teams. Let me know what you think and where you think these sort of teams are going to be heading next year as well. Obviously, we usually missing the 8 one year and then actually potentially making the top 4. We got Geelong, who missed the 8 and then jumped back in. So I'm going to make a quick prediction now. I actually think Fremantle are going to be that team, and I think Adelaide will respond. I don't know if they'll make the... I think they can make the 8th Adelaide Crows. That's a very early prediction, but I think that's also the case. Melbourne is my question mark right now. But let's move on. So, of course, we don't really have the AFL tips and the AFL fantasy breakdown this week, of course, because it is the end of the season. But I thought I'd save to the end of the episode just a quick little announcement on the winners of both the AFL tipping comp and the AFL fantasy comp as well. So, we'll quickly go through my ranking and my brother's ranking. In the end, we'll look at the tips first. My brother came from the clouds in the AFL tipping. He was down the bottom for the majority of this year. But it was a pretty close race between most people. Between, 3rd and 13th, and there's only 14 people in the comp. There's a, 8 tip difference, which isn't a lot, you wouldn't say. I mean, that's one round, really, one really good round. So there wasn't a big difference. But my brother actually finished 4th. He did really well. He ended the season quite nicely. He did only get 6 in the last round, and he actually got the same amount of tips as me throughout the whole year. We both got 132. He just had a better, a margin. So my brother did finish in 4th spot, and I finished in 6th. So, and I was up there for a bit too. I was never going to win it, because we'll get to that in a second. But I was in 3rd for the last month of the season. There were times where I was in 3rd spot. So I could have been a little bit better. But the winner of the AFL tipping comp for the Boundary Riders channel this year is Brandon S. And he led, I think, from round 1. I don't remember when he dropped off. When I was keeping it, as soon as we started really looking at it on the podcast every single week, Brandon was always on top of the tipping comp. So he's been able to hold the lead throughout the whole season. Really good job from him. So to the winners of both the AFL Fantasy Comp and the AFL Tipping Comp, what you guys can do, because we are going to give away prizes for this, if you message if you message me on Instagram, you can see the link down below. Message me on Instagram, and you will, just to show a little bit of proof, the fact that it is you and not someone lying, we will give you a $250 gift voucher to the AFL store. So Brandon S., congratulations. I know I've seen you on the channel heaps of times. I know you watch the podcast. I know you do. So just message us over on Instagram or whatever, and we'll link up. Just talk about a couple of screenshots I'll need just to prove that it is your account and whatever, just so no one steals it. And then you'll get a $250 gift voucher to the AFL store. So really hope you do enjoy that. But looking finally at the AFL Fantasy Comp, and at the end of the year, I have finished 9th on the ladder. I got eliminated in the, the losers bracket in the preliminary final to Pools Vikings, who won the losers bracket, but that doesn't really matter. No one cares about the losers bracket. But the winner of the AFL Fantasy Comp for 2024 by 3 points in the grand final was Fifinator with the upset. Now, he beat Brad SCG, who for the majority of the year was on top of the AFL Fantasy ladder. He let it slip in the last round to Shillings for Billings, who got eliminated in the prelim by the Fifinator. So the Fifinator came from nowhere, and in the final round, he has won the grand final by 3 points. And if I'm being honest, it's probably because of Nick Newman. 152 from Nick Newman in the final round to get his team over the line. Had some really good performances as well in his team. Nick Dacos in the final round. Jai Simpkin, that's a good one. Manor, who he had on the bench, by the way. He wasn't even a reserve. He had Lockie Whitfield, 147, Noah Anderson, 126. But look, on the other side of it, Brad SCG, so unlucky to lose this game. He had Nick Dacos, he had Zach Merritt, he had Jeremy Cameron. Really good decision to pick him up because of obviously the final round against the West Coast Eagles. He had Lockie Whitfield, Nick Martin. Had some really good choices in this game. It's really unfortunate that Brad SCG, he led for a lot of this year. But also to you, Fifinator or Oscar John, if you are watching. I don't know if you've been a frequent watcher of the channel, but if you are watching right now, man, just make sure to, like with the tipping, just make sure to message me over on Instagram. Just a couple of, proof screenshots and stuff like that. And we'll also give you a $250 gift voucher to the AFL store as well. But guys, with that being said, that is the end of the 78th episode of the Boundary Riders podcast. Sorry my brother wasn't here this week. He will be here for the live stream. Again, guys, August 30th, Friday night. No one else has anything on right now. There's no footy on. There's no excuse. I don't care if you got your mother's funeral. Avoid it. Tell your family. Sorry. The Boundary Riders medal count is on. I am watching. 7 p.m, August the 30th, live on the channel. The Boundary Riders medal live count, the second ever Boundary Riders level live count. We've got so much going on. We've got the goal of the year, the mark of the year, the flog of the year. All those nominations, all those votes, guys. You can vote for the awards as well. Remember, click the link down below. Check it out. Make your decisions as well, because they will be... It's not like the election or whatever. There's no paying us off here. Okay, you can't pay us off by millions of dollars. Well, look, if you give us $1 million, I may sway the vote a little bit. But if you've only got 900K, I'm sorry. None of the votes are getting changed. But vote down below. Sorry, I'm rambling. But that's August 30, 7 p.m, live on this channel. We'll be going live. Make sure to join. You don't have anything else on. We don't. Watch it. Okay, thank you for watching this episode of the Boundary Riders podcast, guys. If you did enjoy it over on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. And of course, if you are listening on Spotify, make sure to leave us 5 stars so we keep on getting pushed up in the algorithm. And also because I asked very nicely, I forgot to say that in a review this week. And of course, make sure to follow so you're notified on the podcast and the review every single week. But again, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you all next week.